everyone, my name is Sloan and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are starting a new series here on my channel that is all about different houseplant terms and vocabulary that tend to trip up new plant parents. I got the idea for this series based on some different houseplant Facebook groups that I'm in where someone would mention a specific term and then the whole comment section would be filled with what the heck is that? Or I just learned what this is and things like that. So I thought it would be really fun to kind of compile a lot of the ones that people tend not to know. Hopefully you'll learn something from this, whether you have owned houseplants for years or whether you just got into the community. And this particular video is going to be all about flower vocabulary specifically. So if you're really interested in houseplant flowers, definitely keep watching and comment below any types of vocab or terms that I missed because I am sure that I missed some. But without further ado, let's get into the first term. So I thought we would start off with one of the terms that is most commonly confused or people don't know what it is. And it's also a really fun term. It's peduncle. So here's a photo of what a peduncle looks like on a Hoya plant. I would say peduncles are most often talked about when it comes to Hoyas, but they are not the only plant that has peduncles. And a peduncle is a stalk that is bearing or will bear a flower or a fruit. So you can kind of see in this photo, it's like kind of curved down, coming down. And then there's some like a little like texture on it, kind of on the end. That the texture is something different. We'll get to that. But kind of the stalk that's coming down is the peduncle. And so people that are really into Hoyas get really excited when they see peduncles because it means that their plant has a good chance that it will probably flower. And if you haven't seen a Hoya flower, here's a photo, and they are absolutely beautiful flowers. I've only seen, I think, one Hoya flower in real life, and it was jaw-dropping. So the next flower term is the pedicel, which sounds kind of similar to the peduncle, and it is very similar but slightly different. So the pedicel actually connects the peduncle to the inflorescence or flower. We'll get to inflorescence, but here I feel like this diagram really kind of lays it out very well. You can see where the peduncle is and the pedicel, and then finally where the flowers are as well. One note on the pedicel is that they only bear one individual flower, and so that's where here you see like the cluster of flowers kind of around the diagram there. And here we have a photo of what the pedicel and the peduncle look like on an orchid. So it's not all about Hoyas. There are definitely other houseplants that we will talk about in this video as well that have different flowers, and the anatomy is very similar across most houseplants. So you can see that the peduncle is kind of the long stalk with pedicels coming off of it. And here's a photo of a real orchid, and you can kind of imagine the same thing, peduncle, and then the pedicels coming off of it. Next, we have the inflorescence, which is such a fun word, and these are the best photographs in this whole video. So an inflorescence is really just a cluster of flowers, and there are a ton of houseplants that flower in this way. So the first one we'll start with is the Hoya, of course, because they're really, really known for this, but also the jade plant, which is a succulent, a very common succulent, flowers with clusters just like the Hoya or very similar to the Hoya, so it has an inflorescence as well. And same with string of pearls, and string of pearls have very beautiful flowers if you haven't seen them. I love this photo, absolutely beautiful. The kalanchoe or kalanchoe flowers in the same exact way. I think maybe the common term for this one is flaming Katy, though I could be wrong, but these are very common. You can find them in your grocery store. Beautiful flowers. The next term is umbel, which you can maybe think about what it sounds like. It sounds like umbrella, which leans into what it actually is. An umbel is just an inflorescence that comes from pedicels that stem from a common point. So a lot of the plants and the flowers that I've just shown you have umbels, and they are really characterized by the umbrella shape, which makes it really easy to remember. So here's an example of a Hoya flower, which does have that umbel shape, and you can see they all come from that one common point, which would make it an umbel. So that's one main type of flower that a lot of different houseplants have that consists of really that type of anatomy. But there are a lot of houseplants that have a different type of flower anatomy, kind of like a peace lily, for example. And so we'll get into some of the terminology around those houseplant flowers now. So the first term is Bract, and so what I actually have up here is a picture of a poinsettia, or poinsettia, however you want to say it, and those plants are, find those at the local grocery store, but what's actually interesting about these is that the middle piece is the flower, and all of the red around it is technically not the flower itself. It's called a bract, and those are leaf-like structures that are usually positioned underneath a flower or an inflorescence. And so in this case, the real flower is right in the middle of the poinsettia, and the bracts are really what's surrounding it. And that's actually not the flower at all, although like to us, it kind of looks like a flower, Another common plant that has bracts is the crown of thorns. As you can see here, it has like the two with the inflorescence in the middle. Continuing on with the terms related to bracts is the Involucre. So the Involucre is actually just the term for the ring of bracts that is surrounding an inflorescence. So one really common plant that this shows up with is the dandelion, which is a weed. So we're getting a little bit out of the houseplant territory, but I wanted to call it out because it's just a quintessential example of an Involucre. If a bract is considered large, you can call it a spathe. So there are a ton of houseplants that have a spathe on them on their flowers, like the peace lily shown here. I would go get my peace lily, but unfortunately it's not flowering right now. Should have filmed this a week ago, I guess, but here's a photo of a peace lily to kind of take my peace lily's place. And anthurium flowers also have the spathe. So in this case, it's kind of that like red leaf-like looking thing behind the piece in the middle, which we'll get to. A really interesting flower that does have the spathe, which was very interesting to research, is the bird of paradise. So bird of paradise looks like this with all of the leaves and stuff, but the flower is absolutely beautiful, and it gets its name from looking like a bird. And the spathe shown here is that blue part. So I thought that was really interesting because it doesn't really look like your typical bract or spathe because this doesn't look like a typical flower. So now you know that the blue part on the bird of paradise bloom is called the spathe. And our final term is the Spadix, and that is the little piece that comes out on a lot of the flowers I just showed you. And it's just a little spike with small flowers that are so small that you wouldn't even really think of that as the flower, but it is. And a lot of plants have a Spadix. So here's an example of an alocasia flower where you can see the bract right behind it and the spadix in the middle. And peperomia are a really interesting one because they have the spadix, but they don't have any bracts or spathes. So they kind of just send out the little spadix sticks, and they look kind of silly because there's nothing behind them. Now you know those are called a spadix. I think in this particular picture they almost look like aerial roots or something in this picture, so I wanted to include it because it's definitely very interesting. Here's a picture of a watermelon peperomia that is in bloom. So you can see there's a ton of spadixes kind of coming off of the plant. And then finally, this is a photograph of what a monstera flower looks like, which also has that bract or spathe and spadix kind of coming out of it as well. So those are all of the houseplant vocabulary terms about flowers that I have for you today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun researching all of these terms to make sure that I 100% knew what I was talking about before, as much as I could, before I started filming this video. I love sharing knowledge with the houseplant community, and so I'm definitely planning on making future videos around this topic. And if there are any terms that you were confused about when you joined the houseplant community and you learned what they were, and you were like, oh my gosh, like mind blown, now I know what this crazy term is, please put that down in the comments below, and I will include it in one of my future videos on this topic. And I just want to thank you so much for watching this entire video. If you liked it, please click that like button and subscribe, and I would really love to see you in the next one. Bye!